Hello friends and gamers, and welcome to the Fortress. My name is Jinx, and today we're looking at the campaign medals for USA, the United States, for Global War 1936 version 3 for the Tournament of the Spring Offensive 2021. So the campaign ribbons are a series of 3 ribbons that we put on your chest after the end of the tournament, and they'll symbolize which tournament you attended, how much accomplishments or what kind of accomplishments, how well you did within the game, and which nation you played if your alliance won, and how many major powers you played. If you ended up playing, 2 major powers or 3 major powers, we want that to be represented as well. It's one way for us in the future to look back and show up to these games and have like a representation of your repertoire, your campaigns that you fought, how well you did in them. And I'm pretty proud of it, and I'm really excited to try it out, so it'll be a lot of fun, I think. So the United States is next. And I want to say that I know a lot of my commentators and viewers are probably going to be from the United States. So you'll have to have some grace with me because I'm just a simple Canadian. And I feel like we're inundated with so much American history already that I've always kind of toned it down a little bit because it's always just been loud kind of blaring in my ear. And so I'm pretty familiar with it, but probably not as familiar as with you naturally born patriotic Americans. And so, yeah, that's just my 2 cents and my prequel, my just have some grace with me is all I'm saying. But I want to thank my commentators who've really assisted me in making this work out. Just by viewing my stuff, asking questions, kind of proposing new suggestions and such. You've been an absolute fantastic asset to me, and I wouldn't have been able to, I would have probably gotten stuck in a rut a few times. You know, you guys have been a fantastic help. So that would be Edelwolf, Liam Borowski, Trig, and Madman Dan. Madman Dan is going to be a tournament attendee as well, so it's fantastic to have him on board, kind of giving us 2 cents on the matter. It's nice because the more this is approved by the community and the people and the attendees, the better it is for me. I quite enjoy that. So without further ado, let's talk about what the campaign ribbons are. The campaign ribbons, so there'll be a unique one each year, and it'll have a number attachment starting at 1 and going up from there. That's why I really wanted this one in 2021 to happen, so that we can actually have number 1 for 2021. It's simpler to count. The prestige ribbon, well, it'll have a certain number of prestige stars. I've rewritten this a little bit to make it a little bit more sense. So it shows how many prestige accomplishment the player achieved within the game by attaching prestige stars. A tier 1 star is usually attainable. A tier 2 star is a job well done. A tier 3 star is exceptional work, and a tier 4 star is a rare and astounding achievement. So I wanted to reword this because before I said 1 star is, 1 star is basic, 2 star is well done. But people might think like, well, what if I miss getting the 1st star and the 2nd star? What if I just have a 3 star? Does that mean I get the other 2 stars? No, you don't. It's dependent. You win 1 from one category, 2 from another, or 1 from another category, etc. You get the idea. So the national ribbon shows which nation is played by the recipient. It'll have a gold or silver star attachment if you won 1st and 2nd place. It'll also have an oak leaf to represent if you played more than 1 major power. So that's all it is. The rest of all this video is about this prestige ribbon and how they're won and how they work. And I'm putting this out there to get feedback from the community and see what you guys have to say. Give me your thoughts, your suggestions, but also be aware too that I have limited space. I don't want to expand it beyond 3 for tier 1, 3 for tier 2. So if you have a suggestion of something that you think is better, please tell me on which one you'd like me to remove, so that I can put it in instead, and just tell me that gives me a rough idea of what people prefer and what people don't prefer. I also want to state too that this is not going to go into alt history territory. As much as it would be cool to see Germany conquer all of America, there was not really any concrete, seriously considered plan at the time for Germany to conquer a territory in America or anything like that. So I'm sticking to speeches made by people at the time, statements being made, operational plans in existence, and kind of going off of that. And that's kind of where I'm taking my inspiration from for the most part. Excellent, so let's take a look at Tier 1. The Alcan Highway, Alaska-Canada Highway. Gain a prestige star if, at any point during the game, the USA can trace a railway line from a USA major factory to an Alaska land zone. So this one's pretty basic. The areas a person needs to get from and to is roughly, it's here in British Columbia, essentially connecting this to Alaska over here. Now you could persuade your Canadian or your Commonwealth ally to build a railway line here between Yukon and British Columbia, and then you buy the last one here, $4 and $4. Or you can go this way from southeast Alaska in here, so that will cost you $4 and another $4 here. But that way America would pay for it all. It's not a major handicap, but it's a way of pouring money into something that you might not ever need later on, and it's kind of a handicap in that sense. It's also something that historically happened. My home is roughly here, and it's only a 45-minute drive to the beginning of the Alcan Highway right here, and they have a nice sign saying Mile 0 of the Alaska Highway, and it goes all the way to somewhere up here, I believe. So yeah, fun fact. It's kind of cool to see. So that's why it's a tier 1. Easy to do. Nobody could really take it away from you. Plan number 2, War Plan Indigo. Gain a prestige star if at the end of the game the USA controls 2 infantry class units in Iceland. So this one's, again, more of a hindrance than anything else. It's easy to do, right? You just park 2 units in Iceland and you get it. But it's kind of handicapping yourself by moving 2 infantry class units to Iceland. It's a bit of a pain in the butt, that's for sure. Now, I have something equivalent for Britain, and what it's going to be is basically have, as soon as you can get them in there, put an infantry class unit in Iceland until America goes to war. And that way it kind of, in the same sense, handicaps allies by having 1 or 2 less units to play around with. That's part of history as well too. I think at some point there was about 30,000 troops parked in Iceland for whatever reason. Now on the map it's deceptively, Iceland's not that valuable in gameplay terms. Like, it's just right here. If you're going to use the airbase, you'd use it here. This is a better position, but nonetheless we still have to include Iceland in it because it's a handicap to the allies. Next one up is I have returned. Gain a prestige star if at any point during the game the USA can regain control of the Philippine land zone. So this one has a few tricks to it. Maybe Japan never captured the Philippines, and so you'll never be able to regain it. And so in that case, you'll be forced to do one of these ones. The USA control 2 infantry class units in Iceland. Now, I see now I have to probably reword this and say that you have to, at the end of the game. So that's okay. That's okay to have it. So you can have your units running around, but at the end of the game, you have to have them parked there. So if you decide not to do this one, or if you can't do this one, that Japan is too strongly fortified, then you have to look at getting one of these other options. Either having 2 units in Iceland or building the Alcan Highway at some point. So that's the idea there. And it pushes people into doing something that's kind of inconvenient. And people might want to go for the Alcan Highway first because that's a sure way of getting it, because they might not ever get Philippines. There's always a chance. Philippines is worth $4 to the Japanese, and so they could afford to put in a militia each turn into Japan and still make some profit off of it. So that's all the tier 1. In tier 2, the race to Rome. Gain a prestige star if, at the end of the game, the USA controls the Italian city Rome land zone. I don't know if I worded that right, but Britain has something equivalent which says that the British Commonwealth controls the Italian city land zone. So they'll both kind of fight over this to some extent, and it'll force them, if one gets it, then the other will have to go for one of the other 2 options on there, and that creates some sort of rivalry as well. In here, the Britons have incentive to grab that as well, and likewise the USA, and so it will force them to go into one of the other tiers if they don't end up getting it, and that's historical as well. There was some rivalry there. The Pacific Stronghold. Gain a prestige star if, at the end of every USA turn, until at war with a major power, the USA controls 2 capital ships of any type in Sea Zone 100 off the coast of Hawaiian Islands. That is right. Oh no, that's 68. Why did I say 100? Where is 100? That's a mistake. I must have seen this one, Marshall Islands. Oops. Well, that's that's a different story. 68 is the one. I was remarking to myself like, hey, it's interesting that 100 would be Hawaii, but oops, there we go. Sea Zone 68. So USA has to park 2 capital ships here, and that kind of incentivizes Japan to do the Pearl Harbor attacking and strike them. So USA either wants to give up on those 2 capital ships and say, well, whatever, I'm going to keep the rest of my fleet, or it wants to try to reinforce all this and keep a decent sized fleet there. It creates some different options as well. Now that could be too punitive. Maybe we should just limit it to 1 capital ship, because if it's just 1 capital ship, that means that America's not going to lose its entire Pacific fleet. So that's one way of doing things. Good idea, bad idea, let me know. I do not have to change that to 68. I like this one because too often what I do as America is I simply move my fleet here. If Japan is still in range of surprise strike, I move my fleet here. And then once Japan's surprise strike, because they don't want to lose that surprise strike, so instead Japan goes either in a southerly direction and take out Sydney and New Zealand, or goes and take out Malaya like we saw in Operation Winter Solace, or even goes, if they're a little bit closer, 1, 2, 3, or if they're a little closer, they go and try to take out Calcutta. So those are the options, but Japan doesn't want to lose it, so it moves its fleet further away. And so America could simply move its fleet up here and stay out of that surprise strike. And then once Japan is gone, they swing back here, get reinforcements from their factories here, and they've never lost a single ship, and now they could push across the Pacific. So that's something worth looking at. So let me know if you think it's too punitive. I might need to change it to one capital ship of any type, and that way America only has to sacrifice, you know, $15 as opposed to $30 or something like that. You get the picture. Next one up is Operation Overlord. Gain a prestige star if at any point during the game the USA gains control of one of the two following land zones, while the French land zones of Paris and Alsace-Lorraine are in enemy control. So that's part of the thing that needs to occur. And maintains control for 2 full game rounds, from the end of the USA turn to the end of the second following USA turn. Now the wording on this is horrendous, and I can't think of a better way to put it. You know, this phrase right here in the middle, I'm not sure exactly where to put it. If it's, maybe I should put it before. While the French land zones of Paris and Alsace-Lorraine are in enemy control, the USA gains control of the 2 following land zones and maintains control for 2 full rounds. So that would work to do. Let me know your thoughts on that one. Another thought too is, instead of Pacific Stronghold, rename it Pacific Base. And that way you have it's not necessarily a stronghold, but you know, you get the picture. Or Forward Pacific Base or something like that. Okay, Operation Overlord. Let me quickly check up on the map. You guys all know where it is, but let me just do it anyways. So the enemy has to control Paris and Alsace-Lorraine when the initial push comes into here. Now it's in either one of those 2 territories, and after the initial push, if Normandy is captured by the USA, at that point it doesn't matter because what I'm trying to do here is you have to hold on to Normandy for 2 full turns, but at the same time on the second turn you can move in here. So that's why I didn't say something along the lines of Alsace-Lorraine has to be in enemy control for both those 2 turns. It's only when the USA gains control of one of the 2 following land zones. Yeah, and maintains control for 2 full rounds. So yeah, that's the wording, because it's only supposed to be on the first round that Paris and Alsace-Lorraine are in enemy control, and then at that point it doesn't matter. So the wording here is pretty tricky. Next up we have Tier 3, the Island Hopping Campaign. Gain a prestige star if, at the end of the game, the USA or a member of its alliance or a neutral nation control all or most of the following land zones, except for 2. All land zones with USA printed roundel, all island land zones barring Japanese home country with the Japanese printed roundel, Gilbert Islands, Solomon Islands, Fiji and New Hebrides, New Britain, New Guinea, and Dutch New Guinea. So this one is historical. So in the Pacific Islands, we have all these territories, right? We have all these islands here. Now America has to control all of its initial islands with all of its home country territories at the end of the game with the printed roundel, which means everything here, Attu and Kiska, which the Japanese ended up landing in, St. Lawrence Island, and all these other ones have to be controlled by the USA at the end of the game. Now Japan has to control these at any point in the game, but they have an exception of 5. So Japan has to grab a hold and take control of, as one of their options, Attu and Kiska, Midway, Wake, not the line, Marshall, they have to hold on to Gilbert, Bonin, Volcano, Mariana. Maybe not these 2 actually, but I can't remember exactly. But you get the picture. They have to grab onto a lot of territory here, those ones as well as these 3 here. Palau and not the Philippines. But when the Americans, so the Japanese have to grab a hold of these territories at some point in the game, with an exception of 3 or 4, I think 3 or 4, somewhere there. They have to hold on to a bunch of these territories. So it's quite a bit, but they only have to hold on to it for 1 full turn, and then they're good. And then the Americans have to end the game with all these territories, but not only those territories, they have to grab these territories as well, and Okinawa being a big one, and the Philippines too, because that's part of theirs. They also have to grab hold of the Kurile and the South Sakhalin, but not the Japanese home islands. I don't know if I stated that. All island land zones barring Japanese home country with a Japanese printed roundel. So they don't need to grab Hokkaido, but they do need to grab these 2, which is why there's an exception of 2, because historically the Americans didn't grab these 2. But they did grab Okinawa, and Okinawa is special because in Okinawa, the Japanese get their militia for $1 for a militia there. So Okinawa could be a horrible place to fight. You know, you have a lot of little militia up there fighting, and I think they even get a bonus to their defense. Yeah, Japan gets a bonus to the defense, dug-in defense. In Okinawa, they get +1 defense, but they also get to do purchase militia for $1 in Okinawa and its home country. So it can be pretty deadly for them to hold on to that territory. That's why Okinawa is not part of the home country, but it's Japanese printed roundel, and it makes it much more difficult for them to grab this. So instead of grabbing this, likely the Americans might grab the Kurile Islands or South Sakhalin maybe. That might be a little bit better than grabbing Okinawa. So I might need to get rid of the exception altogether, for that matter, just so that they go after Okinawa and fight that, at least one deadly fight there. That's the idea. Okay, moving on. So now we have the Central Europe campaign. Now gain a prestige star if at the end of the game, the USA or a member of its alliance or a neutral nation control all or most of the following territory. Land zones, rather. 2 of the land zones can be omitted. All French home country, all Great Britain's home country and Gibraltar, Portugal, Belgium, Netherlands, and Denmark, Bavaria, and Western Germany. So that's quite a load of stuff. So what that looks like is you have a control of all French home country, you have control of Bavaria and Western Germany, and you have control of these 2 territories as well as all British home country and Gibraltar down here. So those are kind of key. Now what else? And Denmark is included as well as Portugal. So you have to hold on to those territories, which is kind of a historical outcome of World War II. So I wanted them to have this accessible to them to get to the 3rd tier star, because I suspect that's what they got historically. If I was to put a award system on America's actual involvement in World War II, I would say they easily got a 3rd star, maybe even a 4th star. Next up, we have the Kuomintang Communist Civil War. Gain a prestige star if at the end of the game, the KMT or a member of its alliance control all or most of the KMT home country, except for 3. So this has an exception of 2, because maybe the exception needs to be changed, maybe it needs to be 1, but that allows for last-minute grabs where if Germany grabs something that they're not completely losing that tier 3 star. Alright, so the KMT home country is basically the same as the CCP, which is all of this territory, all Chinese warlords, and including this little island, including Hong Kong and Formosa. So the exception for the KMT is 3, so they don't need to grab Formosa necessarily, but they do need to grab a couple other ones, and that leaves some space if Shenxi is still held by the CCP. We want them to, if they're so desperate to survive, we don't want to hamstring them either. So the exception will likely be Formosa, Shenxi, and perhaps East Manchuria, or if Japan suddenly comes in swinging, or if Russia comes in swinging and grabbing something else. Now, if Russia grabs 2 territories, that changes things quite a bit, and now, of course, the KMT have to make sure they grab Formosa and Shenxi. So there could be a case saying that the exception should be 3, 4, or 5, allowing the KMT to still get to the end game without complete ahistoricity. Not that they want, but the exception of 3 land zones, so I'm accounting for that, is Formosa, Shenxi, and 1 accidental where the Soviets grab it. Alternatively, it could be 1, 2, or even 3 of those up there as well. So I might need to extend that to the 4. Let me know what you guys think. Next up, Liberty of Europe. So this one is very similar to what the other one was, with an exception of 4. And now let me just list off what it is. All French home country, all of Great Britain's home country and Gibraltar, Portugal, Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark, and Yugoslavia, all land zones of Norway, all land zones of Sweden, all land zones of Greek, Berlin, Bavaria, Western Germany, Rome, Sicily, and Northern Italy. The exception of 4 is thought out in this case. I don't want, so to outline all the territories, it's all Scandinavia, but as well as this stuff, not there, this stuff right here, with the exception of Albania, as well as Rome, Northern Italy, and Sicily. So these ones are here. Now, if Italy doesn't go to the war the entire length of the game, I don't want it to hamstring the Americans either. So what I'm doing in that case is giving them an exception of 4. That's 1, 2, 3, excluding the Italians, and then a 4th somewhere else. Maybe the Russians go and grab Norland or Finnmark or something like that, right? Makes it work a little bit better in that case. That's the idea there, or maybe the Russians grab Berlin. So people have commented before saying that there's a lot of overlap between, say, the Eastern European campaign and this larger one for the Liberty of Europe. That's on purpose. I want to stage a couple of the tier 3 ones to go into larger 4. I want to nest the tier 3 within the tier 4 because I want want that to just be an extension of the same thing. You know, tier 3 is good, but tier 4 is more of the same but better, right? That's the idea there, and that's why you'll oftentimes see kind of duplication of the same kind of events, because it makes sense. It's like one is a regular kind of victory and another one is like a total domination victory or something along those lines. You get the scoop. So Liberty of Europe. And then Operation Downfall, gain a prestige star if at the end of the game, the USA completes one of the 2 following objectives. The USA control 2 home country land zones of Japan, or each factory of any type in the Japanese home country land zones has at least 3 damage markers. That one might be easier to do. So the 2 land zones are difficult because the Japanese get dug in defense. That means a +1 to defense for everything. So not only are they defending in mountains, but all your militia now are defending at 3s, and all your infantry at 5s. Your militia also costs only $1, so you get $1 militia that defend at 3. Like 3 of those, or 2 of those is worth what, 6? Yeah, that's 1 tank. So for $2 you get the value of a tank, right, in defense. That's huge. So you're almost never going to capture territory, but you might capture. If I put in 1 territory, that would be easy, but Hokkaido sometimes can get easy as well. Sometimes it's forgotten about because it's kind of up there and you can't move troops back and forth as easily. You can only move 2. So Hokkaido is an option. So that's why I put in 2 territories. I want the Americans to be incentivized to go into bombing campaigns instead. Right now I have the damage at, 4 damage markers. I might need to up that to 5 at the least, because 5 is the maximum minor factory can get. So at the end of the game, the Americans have to make sure they've bombed the Japanese for 5 on all their factories. And if you're playing with a variable ending, if the game doesn't end, then the Americans have to go in there again and make sure they bomb everything at 5. And in the meantime, they're going to be taking their own hits on their strat bombers, and it can get quite costly. So if Japan starts with a factory here, I think in Kyushu, medium, and a major in Tokyo. So that's 2 factories. And in other games, I see other people build another major factory just for that tech. So you'll have 3 factories, and you have to make sure that they each have a damage of at least 4. That means each turn Japan is going to be building up and repairing some of the damage, possibly, and at the same time, they might have fighters that are defending and this kind of thing. And so it's still a bit of a challenge, but it's still doable. And if America does that, that's a tier 4 victory. And I think it's well won at that point to scrunch Japan down to just land zones of Japan and still have that ability to damage them consistently till the end of the game. I think that's good. Although I think I do have to change this to say 5. I think that makes sense. That means you have to bring in some pretty heavy bombers to get them consistently at 5. And that's the scoop, guys. So this is how the USA campaign medals are designed. Let me know your thoughts and criticisms. I do know I have to change this up. There's a few other things I might need to change as well. Like I said, this is nested within this one here with the Central European campaign. I might need to change this to 4 perhaps. Island hopping campaign I'm pretty happy with. The exception of 2 is good, except it might mean that people might avoid Okinawa, but that's okay too for a tier 3. You're at least going into Sakhalin and pushing decently hard into other stuff. So yeah, Sakhalin Island. Operation Overlord, I may need to rewrite it, so send me your proposals on what to rewrite. I might need to rename this into Pacific Base or Pacific Forward Base or something. Race to Rome is good, and I'm pretty happy with these ones as well. They kind of make sense. Ideally, I'd like to probably say once America is at war, at the end of every American turn, they have to have 2 infantry units in Iceland until the end of the game. That is probably a better phrasing for War Plan Indigo. Let me know your thoughts on that one as well. And I believe that about covers it all. Again, highway I'm happy with, and that's it. So thank you all for your comments. Thank you all for your feedback. I really attentively listen and read it all, even though I don't have much time to respond. And I want to apologize if my responses feel blunt or aggressive. They're not intended to be that way. I'm just so short on time. I have to, I'm not as delicate as I could be, with my comments and thoughts. But I really do appreciate everything that people say. So thank you very much. Cheers.